I had forgotten how good this is.
Welcome to the Whiskey Tribe, the most quintessential, the most classic bourbon. We're going to figure out what that is according to whiskey lovers, and then we're going to pull back the curtain and visually present to you those classic flavors that the most number of people are typically finding in the winning whiskey. Winning, I don't know is the right word, because we'll get into it. Daniel, what was the question that we presented to the Whiskey Tribe, the Magnificent Bastard? What do we want to find out?
So what we wanted to find out was, what is the most quintessential representative bourbon? Not necessarily your favorite,
right.
Not necessarily the most purchased, right? Just the one that the most people in our tribe think this could represent all bourbon.
The most common word that people are going to be throwing around is the word classic. But often people say like classic. That means it's synonymous for best.
Or old school.
We don't mean your favorite. We don't mean like, you know, what people perceive as the most popular in a certain category. Quintessential, for example, this is typical, prototypical, stereotypical, archetypical, classic, model, essential, standard, stock, representative.
Right.
What is right down the middle of the road, the epitome of bourbonness. And we're going to go through the top 5 here.
The number 5 is surprisingly Woodford Reserve.
Why does that surprise you?
Well, I actually would have predicted Woodford Reserve to be higher on the list.
Okay. You know, obviously, whenever we're crowdsourcing lists like this, these are going to be whiskeys that people can get their hands on. So I think every single one of these are going to have a tremendous amount of distribution. These are going to be recognizable brands. Okay, so on the nose, I'm getting like, there's a dark oaky cherry, and I am getting an ethanol ding. There's some alcohol heat in the nose. There's
kind of a heaviness and a density to Woodford that I really like.
Yeah.
And for a while I thought, well, maybe it was psychosomatic, right? Like Woodford Reserve made me feel like it was deeper and richer.
I'm getting that tannin, that wood oakiness on the taste, and then there's like this sweet tea over it. But for the most part, this is presenting as an oaky whiskey with some general sweetness, kind of a honey sweet tea on top of it. And I'm getting more of that ethanol layer than I often get in whiskeys at this proof, because this is relatively low. This isn't like the mid-40s.
There's something I'm searching for in here, and there's this density to the nose, but there's a simplicity to it too.
Okay.
So it's heavy and deep bodied, but it's not complex and moving. It's just...
Honestly, I think this may be a whiskey that is often put on the rocks. Yeah, because even at this lower proof, there is some intensity to those flavors that could stand up nicely to some ice.
But this one particularly, that deep brown sugar and molasses note followed with the woody tannin aftertaste, it'll wrap around that ice and still taste like bourbon.
I think you put your finger on a note I was trying to wrap my head around. It is a brown sugar presentation. There's like a sweet tea and some honey, but yeah, definitely it goes deeper into the brown sugar than both of those sweeter.
I get how that could be.
All right, Maker's Mark. This has been around a hot minute.
These guys I have a soft spot for because
already on the nose I dig.
Even though historically they're more recent than a lot of the other brands that are on this list, I just love what they did. They showed up in a market that many people considered to be like a dropping market of rush to the bottom prices for whiskey, and they showed up with a premium bourbon and they marketed it as a premium bourbon and they sold it expensive, and it helped wrangle the bourbon industry back into, you know what, there are people willing to spend money on good whiskey.
So on the nose, I'm already getting, it's a bit more velvety, a bit less bright and shiny with the alcohol, the alcohol layer.
We've always talked about how in your brain, for some reason, wheat should be
softer
and sweeter.
Right.
And it sort of does that slightly in a mash bill on the nose, but we've had 100% wheat whiskeys that present dramatically and herbal, right? So I think it entirely depends on how it sits in the mash bill and what kind of wheat you're using.
And what kind of still you're using, how much character you're pulling out of those.
Because this one I get straight to the cherry and then vanilla cream.
The cherry is a very common note that we always find in the Maker's Mark. And then the vanilla cream, I'm going in. Cherry shows up even more intensely on the taste there.
It does have that slightly grassy herbal note.
Yeah. That keeps
around the end. Instead of the Woodford ends in barrel tannin, but the Maker's ends in herbal notes.
Yeah. It's more of a thinned out honey, at least compared to what I was getting on that Wood. That Woodford seemed a little bit more dark and oily, but it also had a thicker, brighter alcohol layer on top.
Yeah, I mean, even though it's 45, which
Same?
is actually the same, 45 too. Okay, the next one, Elijah Craig.
Oh yeah. Now you and I actually reviewed an Elijah Craig on our other channel, the Whiskey Vault channel, which is a channel where we do nothing but whiskey reviews.
Now, this one is way more herbal at first to me.
Herbal, and there's almost, it's not quite a sandalwood, but that effect of a sandalwood nose.
Yeah, it's less of a char and more of an actual wood oil. I really still feel like we're only operating on like a 30% flavor profile variation.
Oh, that's the point.
It's all so bourbony, so I think they did a good job.
Yes, no, we are in classic bourbon territory for sure. For whatever reason, a walnut note jumped out at me.
I was getting sort of a waxy note, and now that's what it is. It's a nutty note.
For me, it's like an oakiness of brown sugar and like this walnut character to it.
I actually like this one better than the other two for the things that I prefer.
Oh, it's nicely balanced. What are
now we're into Matthew McConaughey's whiskey. It's not actually. I'm just kidding.
He does Wild Turkey.
Yeah,
but specifically,
this is Wild Turkey 101. He did Long Branch.
Long Branch, yeah.
I'm just saying, once you start having a celebrity do your whiskey, he now owns the place, right? Isn't that how it works?
All right.
So, this is what I would have picked.
Hold on. This is where things get very interesting because this is number 2.
Okay.
The Wild Turkey 101. This is very, very often showing up at the top of a lot of lists that we do on this channel.
Oh,
it's a very, very popular whiskey amongst whiskey lovers, whiskey enthusiasts.
Yes, absolutely.
I am not surprised at all that it's showing up at the top of the classic bourbon list, like the quintessential collection of bourbon flavors that are showing up in a singular bottle. What is interesting to me, there is less than 10 vote difference.
Wow, out of almost 700 votes each.
Yeah, this is a neck and neck fight between number 2 and number 1, and it could have gone either way. Could have very easily, very, very easily been number 1 in the quintessential classic epitome of bourbon flavors. And why do you and I like this bourbon so much?
We like it because, one, it's affordable.
Yeah.
Right? It's just like, you could, under $30, you could have damn good whiskey.
Yeah,
30 bucks, right?
Yeah.
And it holds up to everything.
Yeah.
It just drinks neat. It holds up to ice. It goes great in cocktails. It holds up to food really well.
And the 101, very often you're going to find, the mass market whiskeys, you're going to have the proof down in the 40s, if not at 40% ABV.
Right.
It's like 80 proof plus. With this one, the 101 is like, no, this is like 50.5% ABV. 101 is a lot of people don't realize that. That's the proof. The thing I remember about this specific Wild Turkey is it's just so nicely balanced. It has these nice big rich flavors, but very often whenever you get like big flavors, they can get out of balance and one can dominate the others.
And even though this is high rye, it doesn't present as dominantly herbal. It's got a deep base note that just kind of holds the weight of the whiskey.
Oh yeah. I have like a nice apple note in here. I have a nice brown sugar note, an oaky note. I have just a hint of vanilla.
Little herbal still.
Yeah, and this is
grainy.
And I think the reason why a lot of bourbon enthusiasts really like this is because it is so multifaceted. There's a lot of layers here. There's a lot of complexity, things that you can go exploring with, but it's not going to break the bank because often if you want to get nerdy with the whiskey, you're spending a lot of money to do it.
And if you take a bigger sip, I get some chocolate notes in there, like bitter, dark chocolates.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? All right, are you ready for number 1? This is a distillery that opened pretty recently, right? I mean, the brands they work with have been around for forever.
Right.
The distillery has not been around for forever. They named it the Buffalo Trace Distillery, but they made all these other whiskeys there. And eventually during one of the tours, this is just how inside the box a business owner can get, not realizing a consumer perspective.
Right.
They were like, hey, we love the Buffalo Trace. Where do we buy Buffalo Trace whiskey? And they were like, there's not such a thing.
It's just the name of the...
It's the name of the distillery. And then eventually like, we should probably...
Name a whiskey.
Name a whiskey, Buffalo Trace. and then they did. And lo and behold, it's the number 1 on the Whiskey Tribe list of quintessential
classic
bourbon.
That is interesting because you can claim that top spot and not have been around for 150 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
There is a deep caramel note in this that is not present, not just brown sugar, but actual caramel, like candied caramel.
There is more so than most bourbons, a really nice fruity note.
You know, we were looking at, I use apricot a lot, and then the other day I finally went back and got an actual apricot. And I realized the note I'm thinking of when I say apricot is dried apricot.
Oh yeah.
Candied, like dense sweet apricot.
It concentrates all of that.
A real apricot is really subtle. I'm getting that actual fresh apricot as the fruit note in here. It's honeyed apricot with a hint of barrel tannin.
Even more classic on the taste, though.
I'd forgotten how good this is.
This is always, I always enjoy Buffalo Trace. All of these whiskeys that we had, very obviously classic, right down the middle of the road. This is quintessential, absolutely nailed it. This is almost all of them are sharing the same flavors, just in varying combinations of each. So since the Buffalo Trace is the winner, I think we should give a word cloud of all of the most common flavors that Magnificent Bastards are finding in this specific bottle. A visualization of what people most commonly taste in Buffalo Trace. We're gonna do that. Here's the thing. This episode brought to you by the Wizard of Ads Partners. These are marketing professionals that specialize in turning small businesses into, I need a big pour for the big businesses. What? That's a big pour. So, okay.
Into big businesses.
These are marketing professionals that specialize in turning small businesses into big businesses. You can go to wizardofads.com for free articles and advice and finding marketing professionals the right fit for you. Hell yeah! All right, Daniel, so this is a little bit different. We're working on some different set things. This is unfinished, but what is finished is a whiskey word cloud. The flavors of what the Magnificent Bastards deem to be the most quintessential bourbon, the most classic bourbon.
That's true.
Yeah. So let's get a celebratory pour of the Buffalo Trace. What does Buffalo Trace taste like to you? You and I were comparing this to the number 2, the contender. They were neck and neck, the Wild Turkey 101. And we talk about this all the time, the subjectivity of taste. The most common big notes that are on the word cloud, these are very common in the bourbon category.
They are.
Yeah.
And I'm not seeing the one fruit thing other than cherry, but I'm looking for the fruity notes that we had. I guess apple is pretty big.
Yeah.
Okay, brown sugar and vanilla.
Yeah.
Caramel and cherry.
Yeah.
Okay, I could see that. And oak spice. I would have put apple higher up on the list.
Hold on. Oh, you want to get him? You want to get him a little deeper?
Yeah.
You want to see? Is that
Ardbeg?
The biggest ones: vanilla, caramel, oak, cherry, brown sugar, toffee, apple, cinnamon, baking
Corn
spice,
dust.
honey. Yeah. So
Buffalo. I really like these people.
my uncle's lips.
What? That doesn't help.
Rex's mom. It's a little aggressive.
What are you doing?
Turn the volume off of
I got a piece of it.
Does it feel like my head?
Don't get me started. This is
No,
like this is
the hair's
hold
going
on.
back now. It's
This
not
is
the
the
same.
moment where they. Alex, just real question.
Yeah.
Did that feel like a hard-on?